Terror comes in many forms. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Alien vs. Predator. This is the Arachnoid Alien. Terror grips the city of Sandrad. It's overwhelmed by a mysterious outbreak of aliens. The cybernetically enhanced Major Dutch Schaefer and Lieutenant Lynn Kurosawa of USCMC are surrounded by a swarm of Xenomorph drones when a pair of unlikely allied predators appear and offer temporary alliance. Now it's battle to end them as human and predator join forces against an unending wave of deadly Xenomorphs. Well, let's go ahead and get this review underway. And obviously, to get this review underway, one of the regular things happening on this channel is the fact I'll provide you guys the necessary 411. It's the least I could do. It's obviously why you guys like watching these videos, because I add the little necessary sprinklings of parsley, if you will, on the side of your main course. Those sprinklings happen to be the height of the figure. Now, according to the Ultrameasure 5000, as you can probably see it right here, the figure stands exactly 9 inches in height. That's rather impressive. Granted, yes, you're probably not going to be displaying the figure with completely straight museum, boring leg stance, but I just simply stretched it as long as I could get it while still guaranteeing that it wasn't going to fall over, because this guy falls over a lot. That was just to show you guys what the full length of the figure is. Feel free, of course, when you pick up the figure for yourself, to do a little bit more exciting stuff than just what you're seeing right now. Switching that over to 2 centimeters, to make a long story short, you're looking at a figure that's over 22.5 centimeters tall, 22.8 to be exact. Also, to give you guys some full disclosure, when I immediately got this figure out of the packaging, I do what I normally do when just about to shoot reviews. Usually, a lot of times, I'll spend a good half hour or so kind of playing around with the figure, so there's enough for me to talk about when the record button eventually gets activated. Unfortunately, though, full disclosure, when I got this figure out of the packaging, as you probably can see, a lot of the times new figures, even like Xenomorphs for a long time, have been using double hinges, a hinge right there and a hinge right there, allowing the figure to give a double bend. Unfortunately, though, I don't know what ended up happening right here. My guess is this hinge section right here was a little too tight. Ultimately meant that when I took this out of the packaging, gave it a very subtle, I also might add. I wasn't roughhousing with the figure. I did bend the elbow, and unfortunately the peg, being that this joint right here is way too still tight, the peg broke right off. That's not a good way to start. So I ended up having to rely on a little bit of glue, a little bit of TLC, and a little bit of patience to mount the arm back into place and kind of glue it there. I still think one of the hinges will work. The hinge down here may not, because I think a lot of around it has been fused by the glue that I put in there. So again, I want to show you guys, and also let this be a lesson to you when you guys get figures like this out of the packaging. Whenever you get figures out of the packaging, just be very careful. Just kind of slowly. Oh, that's right. Yeah, right there. Yeah, that's good. Slowly kind of work into the joint. And again, you don't want to get it out and just start bending it frantically, because you may end up resulting in the arm breaking off. I didn't really necessarily even need to tell you guys that. But I feel like we've had a good relationship over the years. You've been honest with me, I've been honest with you, and I really want to keep that going. So wanted to tell you guys that a little break happened, glued it, it's A-okay, it's going to be Fonzie cool after that. Having a look, though, at the Xenomorph, the Arachnoid Xenomorph, a rather interesting little chap, a rather interesting big chap. One thing that's made clear for the Arachnoid's style and design, rather a lanky looking Xenomorph, but also its real actual features to the figure and to the character in the game, is the fact it has really strong legs. That's really one of its calling cards. It's about the only calling card that plays into the fact it's called Arachnoid. It basically allows this rather large chap to be leaping up rather high, higher than most other Xenomorphs. That's about really all, I guess, the spider, if you want to consider it more spider-esque elements, is the fact that it does have the high leaping capabilities. There's not really additional arms or anything like that. NECA could, of course, have branched out, kind of given us a little more their take on what an arachnoid xenomorph could have possibly been, but they want to stick it as close as they possibly can to the original video game source material, and this is what it looked like in the video game. And actually a really neat looking design, actually, as well. One thing also as a calling card to this particular design of Xenomorph is a very noticeable crown, this crest that it features at the back of its dome, very similar to that of the Xenomorph Queen, which is also something that alludes to the idea that possibly the Arachnoid Alien is a little bit more of a purebred Xenomorph as opposed to some of the mixed DNAs that come together to make the various different, especially the Kenner-designed Xenomorphs. Of course, those strains would be slightly mutated, depending, again, whatever species that they were attached themselves to. But it's alluded the fact that the Arachnoid Xenomorph is one of more of a purebred xenomorph DNA, and possibly maybe the reasonings why they have the crest crown kind of featured on the back. I suppose another bit of full disclosure, I did notice, though, getting the figure out of the packaging, its jaw is extremely wonky. In fact, actually, this side right here was perfectly fine. It was this side here that was draped off and actually sitting over here. So I just had to kind of pry it back in place, kind of force it back in place. I might just actually submerge this in a little bit of hot water and see if I can manipulate and pull that back over. Other than that, other than the arm, other than the jaw, very happy with how this one turned out. One thing I really like also about this is that it has a split dome. It actually looks like it's been peeled back. Kind of even like the way that the crest looks like almost, not quite a banana, but it kind of looks like you would have actually peeled the layers back, exposing the dome behind it, the fully visible, fully translucent, fully smoky looking dome on the back of the Xenomorph head. I really do think that's neat. Kind of also simulates a little bit like an insectoid body. This could be like the abdomen section, for example, of the spider, even though a spider's not really an insect, but you know what I mean. I really do like the color variation by having that one be back here, a little almost more like a smokier, not quite yellow, kind of more like a brownish, and a little bit of beige happening in there as well. And then with that, you've got the contrast then of having the blue and the darker blue represented here from the front of basically about 3/4 in. You get then the rest of the Xenomorph head happening there. I really think that's neat. Not something we've seen before. And funny enough, of course, it would have to then be something that would be introduced to us in the original, I think it was the 1994 arcade game. And then, of course, it was just expanded out from that. Even like the original video game had this half dome, and really think it works well in the game. And it certainly works quite well here with the translated to plastic that NECA was able to accomplish with this guy. The front of the head, except for really like the sides here, looks very much like your tried and true Xenomorph. Kind of like the way the broader jaw reminds me a little bit more like the Alien Resurrection Xenomorph, just a little bit way it's, just the way it's a little bit more bulkier here, as opposed to the little thinner jaw that we normally see with like the earlier Xenomorphs. Great looking detail that has been added in there. Just to think that it's only really just a bit of a dry brushing that they've done over to the darker plastic that really makes a lot of these details pop. The jaw would be able to open and close. Mine is just, again, a little bit, a little wonky. I like the fact that the teeth and the inner jaw are a bright blue. They almost look like they glow a little bit. And I like that. I like that a lot. Speaking of glowing, not quite glowing, but speaking of lighter colors, of course, this being a video game adaptation, you'll have things like streaks of bold colored lines, specifically like the white lines there on the top of its head, top of its shoulder section, and down the side of its arm. It's also featured basically on all the areas, kind of the outer tipped areas of its musculature get that lighter, whiter treatment. Very much you see it also down the sides of its legs. I really do like that. It's not as video game-esque as what you would normally get with a lot of these video game-inspired NECA figures. Often, though, at times, those will be a very stark contrast of dark to light colors, and the lighter colors being these, again, big strips of color. It's a little less in your face on this particular release. The Xenomorph, also being the Arachnoid Xenomorph, seems to have a longer spinal lower torso section. And the little tubes, whatever you would want to certainly call them, are much shorter in contrast to normally the ones that would stick out to maybe about there or so on regular Xenomorphs. So again, like, while it does feel very much like the same tried and true design of the regular Xenomorphs, the Arachnoid does have enough to it that it feels like it's a very different sort of beast. Literally, quite literally. And I think, again, my takeaway for the calling card on what makes this guy so cool is the fact it does have that kind of half and half, or 3/4, give or take, of having the darker, again, it looks like kind of like a thorax of an insect, and then the front half is regular Xenomorph. Okay, so let's have a look at this guy's articulation. Now, his head rotates all the way around, technically all the way around. Of course, things will kind of get stuck with one another. The head hinges up and down, and then it also does have quite a considerable hinge back. One of the other things that the Xenomorph, the Arachnoid, doesn't have is that little additional spike, which is normally there for Xenomorphs, and NECA often at times has this as something that can be removed so that you can then bring the head further back. They've just simply, for its design, it just doesn't exist. It's just not there. So it allows the head to already automatically move back without you having to take something out as a result of it. The shoulders rotate all the way around, and they also hinge out. Of course, you will excuse me that I'll do the hinging on this elbow and not necessarily this one right here. So it does have one hinge there, and it does have a secondary hinge right there. The arm does rotate also right where the peg would have broken on this one. It has the swinging, the peg attached to the forearm there, allowing the forearm to rotate back and forth. And then also the hands do rotate and hinge back and forth. Also look at the detailing on the interior of the hand. Kind of like how this part kind of looks a little bit more like part of a human hand, actually. Just like that. I think that's really neat. And you've, of course, got the lighter coloring there on the fingertips, again, to mimic that of, also want to mention the little horns here, little spikes from its chin are all using that lighter blue color. Really liking that. The upper torso does have a ball joint. In theory, you could rotate it all the way around. I don't know why you would want to rotate it all the way around, but the capabilities certainly are there. And it also hinges back and forth, and you can kind of rock it back and forth as well. The tail, as you would probably expect it, is a wire frame, so you can bend and manipulate that any which way that you want. Often at times it will be your aid to help support the figure if you are standing it straight upright. I find a little trick is just to kind of bring the tail down, and it sort of works as a support, like a sort of a third leg for the tripod of the figure here. I'll just move this arm up a little bit. The legs go forward, legs go back, the legs go out. Has not a single hinge, but a double hinge happening there in the knee, which also allows the knee to rotate, and in that also allows the lower leg to rotate. Has a hinge, a typical standard hinge, what you would find on Xenomorph figures, up and down, and you can kind of rotate left and right, although it does feel like there's some resistance happening there, so just kind of tread cautiously on that. And then there's also a hinge on not one foot, not one toe, not two toes, but all three toes have that one working hinge right there. Also to note, noting a lot of things in this review, the Arachnoid Xenomorph also sports peg holes on the undersides of its feet. So again, if you wanted to help display the figure a little bit more interesting and a little bit more exciting than just this, you can certainly make use of a standard NECA Toys display stand, which I most certainly will be using because that will help aid the figure in standing. As great as the design is, it still is a lanky Xenomorph, and falling can still be a problem with this guy. Something that NECA Toys have been doing very well for very long are the Alien and the Predator lines, respectively. Every once in a while, the two species will butt heads in movies, comics, and here as well in toy form. Truth be told, though, as much as I really like the Predator lines, the Predators stay pretty consistently the same with one another. It's taking nothing necessarily away from this. I've said this in various different reviews. Of the two properties, I always seem to be more interested, I think, in the Xenomorphs, because I think that's really where NECA Toys gets the shine, because there's so many different variations on Xenomorphs. Case in point here, the Arachnoid Alien. While at first glance, its coloring and its form would almost lend itself to believe, or you to believe, that this is a regular alien xenomorph. But then when you look closely, there's a few little changes and nuances done to this particular figure that makes it very different than regular xenomorphs. I think the icing on the cake on this particular figure release is the head portrait. I love not only do we get that kind of semi-queen crown thing happening on the top part of its head, but it also has that kind of reveal away, that visible dome. That again is really not something we've seen before. This is also an instance as well where a video game tie-in figure I don't feel has as much the stark contrast of paint lines. We've seen this with figures before, so I think this particular figure can still go well with the rest of your Xenomorphs, despite being a more video game tie-in property. Its paint scheme, I think, still works well enough that it could be displayed, like I said, with your other Xenomorphs. I really do like this one a lot, and based on really the other Alien versus Predator figures, the other two lined up in this wave. For a fan of the Alien figures from NECA myself, I think I'm going to be very excited with the end result. I've kind of already, I know what to expect based on the images online, but of course physically getting in hand, kind of being able to play around with them, I really think I'm going to be in store for some really cool Xenomorph figures in the upcoming reviews, as well as hopefully you guys, if you guys want to stick around and stay tuned for the Alien vs. Predator figure line from the folks over at NECA Toys. A great, though, like I said, a great addition to your existing Xenomorph collection that you have right now. Let me know down below. I'm really curious, actually, as well. Of the two lines, the Aliens and the Predator, which one do you like the most? I know often at times the people I follow on social media seem to really be big into displaying a lot of their Predator figures. I don't maybe see as many people displaying their Alien figures. So let me know down below, of the two figure lines that NECA Toys produces, do you prefer more the Predator line, or do you prefer more the Xenomorph line? And simply just because you like one over the other doesn't mean you don't like the other. You may just find, like myself, I'm just a little bit more excited when new Alien figures come out than I am when new Predator figures come out. But let me know down below, guys. I always like reading your comments. Make sure as well, if you are new to this channel or a long-time viewer and just never got around to it, make sure you turn on your subscribe or hit that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications to maximum, so that when new videos are coming onto this channel, like for example the aforementioned other two Alien and Predator figures, you'll be able to know. You'll know right away because you'll get the notification, I guess, sent to you via email. I don't really know how it works, yeah, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on your bell notifications, and future videos will be coming soon to this channel. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.